Welcome to another video tutorial. In this one, I want to show you how we can automate the first in, first out, or FIFO method in Snowflake. Basically, the FIFO method is something that's going to help you manage your inventory if you're someone that's buying and selling goods. It's especially useful when, as you're buying goods, the price of that good is always changing. So basically, you have this inventory that's growing and shrinking as you're buying and selling. And the cost of the goods that you have in your inventory is changing, and the cost of the goods that you've sold is changing. So the FIFO method basically assumes that anything you sell is the oldest stock in your inventory. So as you're buying goods, they're kind of adding to the top, and you're selling from the bottom. And so we want to automate that kind of method in Snowflake to keep track of our buy and sales. So this is what my Snowflake kind of structure looks like. Over on the left we have two tables, a buy table and a sell table. And they're tables that I can edit, I can add rows to, and just to keep track of how much I've bought and how much I've sold of a good. So having a look at the buy table, it looks like this. It's got an index column just to keep track of the order that I've bought things in, just 1, 2, and 3. And you can see this quantity column lets me keep track of how much I bought in each buy. So 200 units, 150 units, and 225 units. And the price column keeps track of how much each unit cost. So $10, $12, and $16. And you can see, so for this example, whatever I'm buying is going up in price over time. We have this sell table. I'll show you that. That has also an index to keep track of the order of sales that we've made, just 1, 2, and 3 from oldest to newest, and also the quantity of goods that we've sold, so 100, and then 110, and then 10 units got sold. And then we have two views, so different to the tables I can just add rows to whenever I've made a new buy or a sale. One of the views is the inventory view, so these views are just going to update automatically as the buy and the sell table update. The inventory table is basically the buy table minus the sell table, where any sales, as we said before, come out of the older stock. So of the buy table, how it had index 1 is the first buy, that's going to be the first one to disappear when we start selling goods. So you can see in our inventory table, after we sold those 210 units, I can see just from the numbers I've inserted in that sell table that we sold 220, the first buy that we made has been completely depleted. It's disappeared from the index, and the second buy has been partially depleted. So we don't have all the units that we got for $12, but some of them are still there. The next table, the next view, I should say, is the cost of goods sold view. And that, I'll show you this one, is the cost of the goods that we've sold. Also keeping to that logic that we sell goods from the bottom of the pile, so it takes that into account when it calculates the price that these goods at as we sell them. So I'll go through step by step how I set this up, starting with the schema called FIFO. It's just a create schema in my example database, this line here. Then creating the buy and the sell table happens in these next two lines, and I'll paste all the SQL in the YouTube description below. And so I just create or replace a table. The buy has 3 columns, the index, quantity, and price, and the sell just has the index and quantity column. And next, just to insert values into them, I've done insert into the buy and the sell, and these are where the numbers come from. So the harder ones to create are the views. So I'll start off going step by step how I created the inventory view and then the cost of goods sold view. So the first thing we want to know, or basically to create an inventory view, we want to know from our buy table, after making all our sales, what buys have been completely depleted and what buys have been partially depleted. So a lot of the logic is around figuring out what rows completely disappear and what rows do we have to slightly adjust, how many units we have left. So the first thing we want to do is get the total number of units sold, and we can do that using this expression. So I'll just paste these expressions in one by one, and select everything from them so you can see what they look like, and then I'll explain what I've done. So this total units sold table is just the sum of the quantity column from the sell table. So I'll look at my sell units here. If I add these three numbers up, the units that I've sold, it's going to equal 220. So 220 units need to come out of our buy table. The next table, which I'll copy over now, tells us a bit of information on that. What buys have we partially completed and what buys have we fully completed by selling 220 units. So this next table called cumulative sum, which I'll show you and then explain, looks like this. So the first three columns are from our buy table. Next we have this total units sold, and that comes from a cross join with our total units sold table. So the cross join basically just adds this 220 number to every row of our buy table. So we can see quantity compared to total units sold. Already we can see 220 is larger than the first buy we made. So that is going to be completely depleted, and it's going to start eating into this next buy we made. And the way we tell that, we can see that, but the way we tell that in Snowflake is adding this extra sum, the cumulative sum column. So that's the cumulative sum of our buy column. So it's basically a running total after two buys. It's this number plus this number, it's 350. After three buys, it adds everything before that as well. And so we can see at what point does the cumulative sum become larger than the total units sold. While the total units sold is larger than the cumulative sum, that means all those buys are going to have been completely depleted by this cell. As soon as the cumulative sum column becomes larger than the total units sold column, which happens in row 2, that means for this buy, for our second buy, that's the buy that's going to be partially depleted by our sales. So that is the cumulative sum table, which we're going to use for the next step. So the next table, called updated quantity, is, as kind of the name suggests, going to tell us what is left after partially depleting our buys from this sale. So we have, as before, the total units sold and cumulative sum. We also have this buy-sell difference now. It's the difference between the cumulative sum and the total units sold. So as we were kind of saying before, where the buy-sell difference is negative, that those buys will be completely depleted by the sale. Where it becomes positive for the first time is where we start partially eating into a sale. So this updated quantity picks up on that logic. So this line here makes the updated quantity column, and it has this if statement here. And what the if statement is basically asking is, if the number is positive in the buy-sell difference column and the number before it was negative, then use that number as the updated quantity column. So we had 150 units originally in this buy. After doing this buy-sell difference, it's become 130 as it's been partially depleted. And so 130 is what is going to come through to our updated quantity for that column. If the buy hasn't been partially depleted, which is the case for our third buy, with these sales it's only gotten into the second buy, it hasn't touched what we bought in that third buy, then the updated quantity is still going to be the same as our quantity column. We're not going to use this buy-sell difference. So 150 has dropped down to 130. 225 hasn't changed. We will keep that at 225. This first row doesn't actually reflect how much is still left. It's saying we've got 200 left in the first buy, even though we know that it's been completely depleted. But we'll take care of that in the next step, because we have this column here that we can tell where there's a negative number in the buy-sell difference, that whole row is going to disappear. So I'll bring through the next step now, which is the final select statement, where we're basically selecting the columns from this table where the buy-sell difference is larger than 0. And the updated quantity is going to be the column that we use to tell how much is left in our inventory. So updated quantity, I'll just select all from, I'll just remove that, sorry, and that. Get rid of that column, comma. So updated quantity has just become quantity now. That first index row has been removed because it had the buy-sell difference larger than 0. The price is still in there, that is unchanged because that's just the price per unit. Then we have the total cost, which is the price times the quantity. So that's our inventory view. The last thing we need to do is just go to the top of the selection and do this create replace view inventory with index quantity and price total cost columns as the selection here. So if I run that, it's just going to replace the inventory view with the same as it was before. So the next thing we want to work out is this cost of goods sold table, and I'll bring that up as a reminder. Basically, this is showing how much we bought the goods for that we've sold. So we made 3 sales, sale 1, 2, and 3. And as an example for that third sale, I can remember we sold 10 units. And this is saying we paid $120 for those units. And so the tricky thing about this one is because we're using the FIFO method, so these sales are always coming out of the bottom of our kind of inventory stack, we have to know what has been sold before we make a sale. So we're going directly back to the buy-sell tables, and to figure out how much the goods cost for this third sale, we would already have to know how much had been sold for the first 2 sales. So I remember the first 2 sales sell 210 units, and our first buy was 200 units. So we have to know that first buy that we made has been completely depleted, and this third sale is actually at the cost of the second buy we made. So we have to basically compute this updated inventory for each cell, so we know how much has been sold just before the sale we're about to make to know how much it cost us. And I'll explain how to do all of that in a few more steps. So the first thing we want to do, I'll bring in this expression, is work out the cumulative units sold. Let me show you how that looks. That is a running total of the sale quantity. Oops, always forget the comma. So index quantity and the cumulative total of this column here. It's going to be used in the next step, which I'll bring in as well. Next expression I've called previous sales. And let me show you how that looks. So previous sales is a full outer join of the sell table we just made and the buy table that we have up here. So as I said before, for each sale we need to calculate an updated inventory. So for each sale we've got all of our buys attached to it. Cell 1, we have 3 rows of buy quantities, same as cell 2 and cell 3. It's just a repeat. We have the buy price, and we also have the sold previously column. So sold previously is cumulative sell, which is what we calculated in the step before, minus sell quantity. So that's going to tell us for the first sell, sold previously is 0 because nothing has been sold before it. For our second sell, we've just sold 100 units for the first sell, so sold previously is 100, and then same for the third sell. We also have this cumulative buy column, which is calculated here, which is partitioned by sell index. So we have 3 groups of cumulative buy, which is just the running total of the buy quantity. And then we have the buy-sell difference, which is the cumulative buy minus what was sold previously. So this tells us what has been fully depleted in cells coming before this one we're about to make, and what's been partially depleted. And so that is going to help us with our next expression, which I'll bring in just here. And I've called this one updated inventory quantity. So updated inventory quantity has similar columns to what we saw before, but two extra ones called remaining inventory rank and updated inventory. So the updated inventory is the goal of this whole step basically. This is how much inventory we have after we've sold everything before the sale we're about to make. The updated inventory comes from our buy-sell difference, which is buy quantities that have been partially depleted, or it can come from our buy quantity, which are buys which haven't been depleted at all. So we want to know how much has been sold previously and what has been partially depleted, what's left of that buy, and what hasn't been depleted at all, and what is still all there basically. So if you just look at the answer before we see how we do it, we can see our updated inventory for the first sale we're about to make is just the same as our buy table. We bought 200, then 150, then 225 units. For the next sale, 100 units have already been sold. So for our first buy, 100 of those units have been depleted from our oldest buy. The next two buys haven't been touched. For the last sell, this number doesn't look quite right, but we'll deal with that in a minute. But we know by the end of this we'll have 140 left of our next buy, which is 10 less than there was in the step before. Still, this third buy hasn't been touched. So whole numbers come from the buy quantity, partial numbers come from the buy-sell difference. And the way we know whether to take a number from the buy-sell difference column or the buy quantity column is to use this remaining inventory rank column, which I've created. So updated inventory takes a number from buy-sell difference where remaining inventory rank is 1, otherwise it will take it from buy quantity. And the way it calculates remaining inventory rank is it just ranks buy index grouped by sell index. You can see here. And so this remaining inventory rank is going to be the same as the buy index, essentially, except when a buy has been completely depleted. In that case, we're not going to be selling anything from that buy order because it's completely disappeared. So we need to set that rank to be down to the next buy. So that happens for our third sell, we know that. And I've added this condition here where if the buy-sell difference is less than or equal to 0, as happens here when a buy order has been completely depleted, make this buy index null, just for when we're doing the rank. So Snowflake treats null as the largest number you can have, basically. So now when it's ordering our buy index smallest to largest, it's actually going to have null 2, 3. So the smallest number is the 2. Let's put a number in the second column, then the next rank is 2, and then 3 is the largest number here. So for this case, our updated inventory is made up of 140, which comes from the buy-sell difference in this column, and then 225, the buy quantity in this column. We know this first number isn't true. We know we don't have 200 units from the first buy, but we'll deal with that in the next step where we can get rid of rows with negative numbers. So the next expression I'm going to bring in is called cost of goods sold whole. So when we're calculating the cost of goods, I'm going to do it in two steps. Cost of goods sold whole and cost of goods sold part. Cost of goods sold whole is just going to be the cost of goods that we bought that are completely depleted by a sell. So it's not just partially eating into a buy we made, it's completely depleted that buy and then that row disappears basically. So I'll show you how that looks. So in this table, we create a cumulative inventory from our updated inventory. This again is just a running total, as we've done before. We've dropped that row with the negative buy-sell difference using this expression here where buy-sell difference is larger than 0. And we've also created this updated buy-sell difference here. So this one is the cumulative inventory minus the sell quantity. So now instead of working out the sales that have happened before the sell we're about to make, now we're depleting our buys with the current sale, with this one we're about to make, and figuring out how much we bought those goods for. And so the cost of goods sold whole column is where the buy-sell difference is less than 0. So we're using the same logic before to find the negative numbers here to tell us where a buy is being completely depleted. And so put that in real terms, we bought 200 units in our first buy. First sell sold 100 units, so that partially depleted that first buy. The second sell sold 110 units, so that first buy is now completely depleted with 10 units left to get from somewhere else from our next buy. So because that second sell completely depleted that buy, we can say whatever was left from that buy order times it by the buy price, and the second sell is going to cost at least that much because it's used whatever was left in that buy order plus a little bit more. So we're just taking that part of whatever was left in the buy order and putting it in this cost of goods sold whole column so we can add it to any partial buys that get depleted in the next step. So the next table I've called, or the next expression I've called cost of goods part. And I'll show you how that looks. So in this table we calculate the partial cost of the goods that have been sold in this sale, and then add cost of goods whole to cost of goods part to make this cost of goods all, this total cost of goods table. So I'll start off by explaining probably this cost of goods part rank. We want to know which buy we're selling from, basically. So in some cases, like we just calculated in the first step, we've completely depleted a buy, and now we want to start selling from the next buy we made, the next oldest buy. And so how this works is rank similar to before. It ranks by buy index grouped by sell index. So it's just going to always look to the oldest inventory we have because the buy index is ordered that way. If we've completely depleted a stock or a buy like we did in that previous step, then this number is not going to be 0. So we know we completely depleted our first buy when we're doing our second sale. And so up here we can see if the cost of goods sold is 0, use the buy index. Otherwise, treat this buy index number as null, which again, Snowflake treats as a very large number. So that's going to rank the lowest in our cost of goods sold rank. So for the first sell we're making, we're going to be depleting our first buy. For the second sell, we've already taken care of how much we paid for the rest of that first buy. We now want to calculate how much did we partially sell from the next buy after that one. So it's the next row down that gets this rank of 1. For the third sale, it didn't completely diminish a buy in that previous step, so that's just going to have the rank of 1 for the smallest buy index, which is 2. For the cost of goods part column, we calculate looking at this cost of goods part rank, seeing where this column equals 1. That is the row that the cell is going to come out of. And we do the updated inventory, this column, minus the updated buy-sell difference, this column, times the buy price. So for our second sale, as an example, we already know it's at least cost $1,000 because 100 units came from that first buy and that completely depleted it. But we sold 110 units in this sale, so 100 units have been taken care of. We still have 10 left to get the price of. So we get 10 from 150 minus 140, and then times it by the price of the next buy, which is slightly more expensive than the $10 buy it was first using up. We calculate that, and so that cost of goods part is $120. And this cost of goods whole is the other cost of goods all is the cost of goods whole column plus the cost of goods part column. So these two columns added together. The last expression to bring in is just going to group this cost of goods all column for the different sales. So here I've just gone select cell index and the sum of the cost of goods all, called that cost of goods sold, from this table we just made, grouped by the cell index. So run that, and that is now how our cost of goods sold view looks. So the last thing we need to do is just copy this line over, stick that at the top to create or replace the cost of goods sold view as this all these expressions underneath it. So that's done. So hopefully that has been helpful for your FIFO work, and thank you for watching. Anything else you want to know, add them to the comments below. Thank you.